Buddhism has 500 million followers worldwide. The Strategist is not one of them. Prior to heading to Cambodia, the closest thing he had to a spiritual practice was his color-coded work calendar. So he bought a one-way ticket, thinking it'd help him recover from burnout. What he didn't realize was burnout wasn't the half of it. When his job was taken from him, his entire identity had gone with it. He's not a Buddhist, but his 3 learnings from his time in a Buddhist country will stick with him for the rest of his life. The small chair wobbles every time the strategist shifts his weight, and the humid climate sits on him like a second shirt. But he doesn't mind. When his bowl of fish amok arrives, turmeric yellow, steaming and served in a banana leaf, he pauses to appreciate where he is. Nobody knows who he is, and none of them care. The anonymity is like a vacation in itself, and it is, or at least that's what he thinks. The strategist came to visit Cambodia specifically because it wasn't the obvious choice. Thailand was for people who wanted Instagram photos, but this was for the people who truly wanted to escape. Yet, even though he claims he's disappeared, he can't help pulling his phone out between every bite. When he opens LinkedIn, he sees a post from his former co-worker and notices she's been promoted. Instinctively, he taps the like button. He puts his phone down and once again tells himself he's grateful to be away from it all. When the server comes to bring his check, she smiles and tries to spark a conversation with a simple question. "So, what do you do for work?" He opens his mouth, but nothing comes out. 6 weeks ago, he would have proudly told her he's a director of strategy at a major tech company. But today, he's unsure how to respond. At that very moment, he realizes he lost more than his job. He lost his identity. All of a sudden, his feelings of peace and freedom evaporate. He stumbles through an embarrassed response about how he's in between jobs, and braces for the awkward pity he's about to receive. The server nods once. "Many people like you come here," she says nonchalantly. That's it? No pause, no softening, no follow-up. She's back behind the counter before the strategist can process that the conversation is over. Her lack of response puzzled him. Even though he didn't want her pity, he expected something. Even judgment would have made it feel real. Instead, her indifference spoke volumes. His title, his salary, the LinkedIn banner he'd spent a weekend designing, none of it matters here. In fact, it doesn't even exist. Buddhist philosophy has a word for this, anatta, or no self. It's the idea that the identity we spend our lives constructing isn't fixed or permanent. It's a story we repeat to ourselves until it feels like bedrock. In the West, if we lose this sense of identity, it feels like something inside us has died. In Buddhism, clinging to this sense of identity is the problem. While our former director of strategy doesn't know the word for it yet, the small realization he just experienced was his first step towards a new beginning. After sitting with his thoughts for a bit longer, he opens his phone, finds the LinkedIn app, and deletes it. That simple act takes a heavy weight off his shoulders, but he doesn't realize how much more weight there is. The strategist finds his seat on the bus. The driver is outside, cigarette in hand, chatting casually with the ticket vendor. 45 minutes behind schedule. "Can you believe this?" the strategist says, turning to the local man seated next to him. "We were supposed to be on the road 45 minutes ago, and he's out there smoking." The local man glances out the window, then back to the strategist. "Well, he's not allowed to smoke on the bus." He doesn't care if the bus driver takes a few more minutes. He's in no rush at all. The strategist is puzzled by his indifference. "Right, but don't you think he should skip it? We're already so late." Instead of answering, the local man offers a question of his own. "Why are you in such a hurry?" The question paralyzes the strategist, similar to the response the server gave him at dinner last night. "I'm not in a hurry, it's inconsiderate. Where I'm from, if someone was this late, they'd do everything they could to make up for lost time. I don't like waiting." The local man nods, in the way people nod when they're being polite rather than convinced. When the bus finally lurches forward, the strategist keeps going, trying to justify his frustration. I mean, it's not even that I have somewhere to be. I don't have anything on my schedule. I don't know. When he glances over, the local man is fast asleep. Without his conversation partner, the strategist turns towards the window. The city dissolves into countryside. Rice paddies stretching flat under a low sky, a monk on a moped, a kid chasing something at the edge of a dirt road. Nothing outside has a sense of urgency. Nothing is behind schedule. He sits with that realization and suddenly stops worrying about when he'll get to his destination. In Buddhism, there's a concept called dukkha, often translated as suffering, but a closer translation is dissatisfaction. It's a persistent, low-grade friction with the way things are. It's essentially an equation that states pain times resistance equals suffering. The bus delay was the pain, a simple logistical fact, and the strategist's frustration was the resistance. But when he finds a way to subtract his resistance, all that's left is a peaceful bus ride through the Cambodian countryside. When the bus finally pulls into Siem Reap, the local man stretches, grabs his bag, and gives the strategist a nod on his way out. Instead of rushing off the bus, the strategist sits quietly and lets everyone else get off before him. He's surprised to realize that a small part of him wishes the bus ride were even longer. After spending the last decade trying to predict the future, the strategist is eager to walk into the past. Prior to arriving in Siem Reap, he did extensive research, cross-referencing tour companies, reading reviews, and booking the guide with the highest rating. Old habits die hard, but the moment he steps through the entrance of the Angkor complex and the jungle opens up around him, the planning falls away. Midway through the tour, the guide explains the engineering behind the Khmer Empire's water management system, an intricate network of reservoirs, canals, and moats that sustained a civilization of nearly 1 million people in the middle of the Southeast Asian jungle. The strategist slows down. This, he understands. A problem, a system, a solution. He finds himself asking follow-up questions. How long it took to build, how many people it required, how they coordinated it all without modern tools. He imagines the planning sessions, the contingency maps, and the men who sat around deciding how to engineer an empire into permanence. He's smiling without realizing it. Then, almost as a footnote, the guide adds, in the end, even their water management system couldn't hold back the drought. When the tour guide continues on, the strategist's feet follow him, but his mind is stuck on the downfall of such a powerful empire. No matter how well they planned, they were unable to prevent the collapse that came anyway. The most sophisticated water management system in the ancient world, and it still wasn't enough. He'd built the most sophisticated strategic plan his company had ever seen, yet on one unremarkable Tuesday afternoon, someone decided that wasn't enough either. When they reach Ta Prohm, he tells the guide he'll catch up in a few minutes. He finds a stone ledge to sit on and looks around with a heightened sense of clarity. Banyan trees have split the walls with the patience of centuries, their roots swallowing calf-stoned away water takes a riverbank. This wasn't a civilization that made a fatal mistake. It was a civilization that did nearly everything right, and still ended up here. In Buddhism, this is called Anicca, or Impermanence. It teaches that nothing is fixed and that nothing stays forever. The exhaustion the strategist carried home from a decade in corporate strategy had a name he never knew. It was his own version of trying to build permanent stone walls in a universe that behaves like a jungle. For a long moment, he stops trying to extract the lesson from what he's looking at. He just looks. On his way out, he asks the guide where to watch the sunset. 20 minutes later, he's perched on a hill above the entire complex, the temples emerging from the canopy below him like something the earth is slowly reclaiming. He doesn't open his phone or think about tomorrow. For a man who spent a decade trying to predict the future, simply sitting quietly finally feels like enough. When his trip finally concludes and the strategist is back home, Within just an hour of landing, the noise rushes back in. Notifications, obligations, and the low hum of a world that runs on urgency and output. The peace he carried out of that jungle doesn't survive the baggage carousel entirely intact. But here's what nobody tells you about Buddhist philosophy. It's a practice, not a retreat. It's something you return to day after day. While the strategist isn't going to shave his head and join a monastery, or sell his furniture and move to Southeast Asia, he can't deny that part of him changed during his trip, and it's a change he wants to sustain. He went to Cambodia because he was lost, but somewhere between a dinner table in Phnom Penh, a 6-hour bus ride, and a jungle that swallowed an empire, he found something he didn't know he was looking for. He is not a Buddhist, but the country that introduced him to anatta, dukkha, and anicca gave him 3 things his job never could: a lighter sense of self, a quieter relationship with friction, and the humility to stop mistaking control for security. If you enjoyed this video, consider subscribing to Easternized. Thanks for watching. Until next time.